start off with introductions once again. So thank you everybody for your patience. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Rebecca Zito. I'm the Senior Manager of Public Affairs with Pittsburgh Water. Joining me tonight from the project team, we have Shannon Connell, who is an engineer and project manager within our engineering department, and Tasha Butler, who works directly with the customers and residents who are receiving lead service line replacements. She has been with this program since its inception in 2016, when we first put our community lead response in place. Darby Neidig, who works with our engineers in our engineering department, is also on the call, and Dan Duffy, who is the program manager for our lead service line replacement program, Community Lead Response. He is also joining us tonight. So there are folks with a wealth of knowledge who are very familiar with this program, have a lot of hands-on experience with it. They'll be able to help answer questions. I'm just going to go through our presentation relatively quickly to set the stage. And then please enter your questions in the chat, and we will go through those one by one. We have almost 200 people on this call tonight, so quite a few people. This is obviously the place to be on a Tuesday evening in Pittsburgh. So I thank you all for joining. All right, so our agenda for tonight is to provide an overview of the neighborhood lead line replacement program. We're going to talk through the project impacts and the timeline, and then get into some of the policies associated with the program. And that includes restoration, the agreement which you should have received, and the termination policy. And then we will answer questions. So Pittsburgh Water's community lead response, that has been in place since 2016, and we have come such a long way since that time. We have invested almost $220 million to replace 27,500 public and private residential lead service lines throughout our drinking water area. And we remain on track to replace all those residential lead lines by late 2027. So just so much progress has taken place since 2016 when we put this program into place. And we are now just starting some of the last contracts, the last project areas within this overall program. When we first put our community lead response into place, we established an equity-based prioritization model so that we could address the most at-risk communities first. And that included neighborhoods that had children who were 6 years or younger, women of childbearing age. We use the Allegheny County health data to determine where there were people that have been exposed to lead. And we also looked at income as well as our historic records associated with service line material. Our program now serves as a nationwide model for communities who are just beginning this work. We also implemented an orthophosphate corrosion control method, which is part of our treatment process in April of 2019. And orthophosphate helps to provide a protective barrier on the interior of the pipe, which reduces any type of corrosion into water as it's traveling through the pipe itself. And so any of those households or properties that still have lead service lines, this helps to protect them and reduces their exposure to lead. With the testing that we have been doing, we are now seeing reductions all across our drinking water system, and lead levels are at historic lows for Pittsburgh. And we have been very fortunate to use an abundance of state and federal funding to help finance these projects. And that is saving customers over $384 million, we estimate, over the life of the loans that we have received. So the work that we are going to be doing is to replace residential public and private lead lines found within the project area. So all of you within the project area in Highland Park, when we go into your property, we will be working with you to go into your property to investigate and determine what your service line material is made of. If we do find lead, we will work with you to remove the lead service line. And when we talk about a service line, what that means is the smaller pipe that runs perpendicular to the water main in the street. So if you look at this graphic, this larger pipe, this is the water main. And there are service line connections that branch off of that water main. The public side is what we refer to as the public side is the portion of the pipe that connects to the main in the street and comes to the curb box, typically at the sidewalk. Then the private side, which is the portion of the pipe that the property owner is typically responsible for. It extends from the curb box at the sidewalk all the way to the water main. Now, with the lead service line replacement program, the ownership responsibilities typically do not matter because Pittsburgh Water is removing the pipe in its entirety. So we are going to be removing both the public side and the private side at no direct cost to the customer. And we will be working with a contractor, a construction company to implement this work. That contractor is Independent Enterprises. And so we are replacing lead lines through these water main and targeted lead line programs like the one we are implementing here. These different programs have helped us to expedite the replacement of the lead service lines since 2016. And the different projects and programs that we implement, some of those do include the replacement of the water main. We have different programs within our capital budget. When we talk about a water main replacement project, that is focusing on replacing a water main that is historically old. And when we identify lead service lines within that project area, we will replace the lead as we move along. This project that we are going to be implementing in Highland Park is really just focused on the service lines. There is not going to be any water main replacement. It's all just service line replacements. And this is just one neighborhood in a much larger project that is made possible by funding through PennVest, which is Pennsylvania's Infrastructure Investment Authority. Earlier this year, we received a grant and loan package from PennVest to implement this project. And through that funding, we are going to be removing about 3,000 locations across our drinking water area. And so these next few slides get into the project itself. This is the project area. The southern boundary is essentially Stanton Avenue, and it continues around this area. And we are going to be, where you see the different colored shading, we are going to be moving from one area to the next. So starting with this southernmost area known as Area 1, then Area 2, which is in the orange, the green area will follow, and then the final area will be the pink. Shannon, if you don't mind coming off mute, could you talk a little bit about the project boundaries overall?
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by project boundaries?
Just the different streets that will be impacted by this work. Because I think it's not very visible on the map.
We have a project map on our website where it's a bit more interactive. You're able to zoom in closer to see as opposed to just this PDF right here. I can pull up our project map and share a link to it in the chat.
That would be, yeah, I think that would be really helpful. Okay. So there are a few different steps in this process. They will start with project initiation, which is really when the customer signs and returns the agreement back to Pittsburgh Water. We do need to have that signed and sent back to us before we can begin any type of work. Once we receive that, we will contact you and set up an appointment so that a Pittsburgh Water representative and the contractor can meet with the customer to review the construction methodology and the property impacts. Once we meet, we will begin to inspect the service line materials. We will have a construction crew go to each property. They'll work within the area to verify the service line material, and this will help to identify the locations with the lead service lines. To verify the material, we do need to inspect inside the curb box. This requires us to disturb a sidewalk pad so that we can complete this work. Anything that we will disturb as part of this project, we do replace. And then we will move forward with the installation of installing the new service lines. When a lead service line is found, that line will be replaced. We do coordinate with the owner or a designated representative of the property, and the lead line is replaced at no cost to the customer. And we will come back to restore the area. So we will first provide a temporary restoration, and that is filling the area, the disturbed area to grade in the sidewalks. We will be laying 4 inches of asphalt if there's a roadway excavation, and then full restoration will come back when the project is completed. The reason why full restoration must wait is that this project is going to start in the late summer, and we will not be able to do any restoration in colder weather. That all has to take place in spring and summer. So our anticipated schedule for this project is we expect it to begin in late August of this year. These projects do typically last approximately a year. So substantial construction will continue through 2027. That gets us to substantial completion, and then final restoration will begin next spring. This really follows DOME's winter moratorium. In our typical work schedule, our contractors work Monday through Friday from 7 to 5. With traffic, crews do need to close streets where the service lines are being inspected or replaced. One thing to keep in mind is that this happens on typically a block by block neighborhood or a block by block basis. So if you remember the image of that project area map, we won't have that entire area ever closed at the entire time. Our lead service line replacements happen on a block by block basis. They're scheduled, and we move through a project area systematically. And our contractors do work with residents if they need to access their homes or need to get in and out of their homes at certain times. They will be able to work with you to accommodate that. It just requires a little bit of communication and coordination with them. And then we do
Hey, Rebecca, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Stephanie Walsh. We've gotten some messages that there are people in the waiting room who are still trying to be let in. So I just wanted to flag that for you.
Oh, thank you for the heads up.
Can't hear anything.
Okay. So we just went through the traffic. We were talking about the parking. When we are replacing lead service lines in a given street, there will be no parking signs posted. Those are placed at least 48 hours in advance before any enforcement would take place. And so we do ask that people watch for those. We try very hard to not have to tow. Towing is our absolute last resort. We do try to make contact with the property owner if we need to ask them to move their car. So with the construction, our contractors are required to use a trenchless installation method. This is the least disruptive way in which we can remove a lead service line. And we have been able to use this method in most cases in those 27,000 lead service lines that we have replaced. About 98% have been able to be completed with this trenchless installation method. And unless it's determined to be technically infeasible, we will use that method first. The homeowner or a representative who is 18 years or older, they must be present during replacement. We will backfill the area that's disturbed as part of the service line work, but we do not restore the cosmetic features of the property. Those would be things like stairs or a retaining wall, decorative landscaping. Those things could be disruptive. Those coordination meetings that we have at the beginning of the project are really essential for working with the contractor to point out those things, those items within your home to so that they can understand what they need to work around, and they can communicate to you the access that they'll need to be able to verify the lead service line and also perform the replacement. And we will access the curb box for inspection. The curb box itself is public property. So I want to go through some of the responsibilities and stipulations within the agreement. This is our standard agreement that we have been using since 2018, and all of the different individual customers who we have worked with have signed and returned this to us. It protects the customer and Pittsburgh Water and provides the assurance that Pittsburgh Water will perform the service line work at no direct cost to the customer. So some of our responsibilities include replacing the service line from the water main to the curb stop. That is the public portion. And then replacing the service line from the curb stop to the water meter. That is the private portion. And then we will backfill any excavation from the curb stop to the property. And we will make interior plumbing modifications so that they are up to modern Allegheny County plumbing code. And then the property owner responsibilities, we do need for you to provide us with safe, accessible working environment. So that would include removing any obstructions that may block access to the water meter or the service line. And then the property owner will be responsible for replacing exterior landscaping, the hardscaping, any structures that might need to be disturbed as part of the service line replacement or might impede its replacement. And then there are sampling requirements that will need to be followed once the replacement is complete. And again, our lead help team will walk you through what those requirements are. There is a termination component to this, the termination policy that we have. It's important to understand that it is mandated by the Public Utility Commission. The Public Utility Commission does provide oversight of Pittsburgh Water, and this is to avoid partial lead line replacements in all cases. We know that the safest way to eliminate the presence of lead is to remove that lead pipe in its entirety and not leave any portion of it behind. So we are committed to removing those lead service lines, and the Public Utility Commission wants us to remove them as well. We are also obligated under the EPA to remove all lead service lines within the next 10 years, and Pittsburgh Water is well ahead of most cities. If the property owner declines or is unresponsive to the agreement, we will terminate the water service, and it will be restored once proof is submitted that the lead line has been replaced. A series of notifications are sent to potential termination sites. These are starting 37 days before termination. If you have already returned the agreement, you can ignore the 37-day notice. But those 37-day notices have, I believe they have already started to go out. And so we do want to get those agreements back from you as soon as possible. Since this requirement came into place in 2021, we have only terminated vacant properties. And then if you have questions, you can contact our lead help. Deanna Whip, who is our public affairs coordinator, she will soon begin providing the representation from public affairs to help answer questions and work with property owners in conjunction with lead help as this project is moving forward. And so with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can begin going through the chat where I know there are a lot of questions.
Rebecca, this is Dan Duffy. I'll start off trying to address. We've been watching the questions come in and trying to group them into a series. So again, my name's Dan Duffy. I'm a consultant to Pittsburgh Water, working on the lead service line replacement program. And a lot of the questions that we've seen on the chat relate to why certain addresses have received an agreement and others that haven't received an agreement. Why not? So we follow the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection guidance for determining whether a location has a lead service line or we don't know what the service line material is. Pennsylvania DEP has a pretty involved process that we need to follow before we can say that there's not lead at a location. So if you have not received an agreement, what I would advise you to do is go on to our web map. I think Shannon might have put a link to that in the chat. We can put another link to that in the chat. Put in your address. What we have for information on your address is publicly viewable on our web map. If it shows that it's non-lead, if you'd like for us to come out and take a look in your basement, just confirm the materials, we're happy to do so. Call into lead help and they will schedule an appointment. If it says that you have a lead or galvanized iron or an unknown service line and you have not received an agreement, again, please give us a call. If you're within the project area limits on that map, please give us a call to our lead help desk, and we will look into it further. And if you should have gotten an agreement, we'll get one out to you. So that sort of defines whether you have an agreement or not, whether the DEP standard for saying there's non-lead at a property has been met. A lot of other comments regarding the agreements. I know at one point in time we had a deadline of 10 days in there to return it to us, which is what we would like. We got a lot of complaints from people. And a lot of people thinking if they didn't return it in 10 days that they lost their opportunity. So We do ask that you return it to us as soon as possible. If you don't return it to us, it starts a series of robocalls and folks from our lead help desk trying to reach out. I think we'd all like to avoid that at all possible. So if you've got an agreement, we ask that you send it back to us as soon as you can. Rebecca talked a little bit about the termination process. In the first step of that, there's a series of 5 different communications we need to go through, including written communications we send in the mail, postings that we have to put at your address, and including when it comes down to closer to the day we shut the water off, knocking on your door to try to contact you directly. The first of those is written communication 37 days in advance. We send that out to every location, regardless of whether you've sent an agreement or back. So if you get that letter and you've sent back your agreement, you can sit back and wait for us to contact you. If you'd like to double check that we've received your agreement, again, by all means, please contact Lead Help, send an email, give them a call, and they can confirm whether we've received the agreement or not. The issue we've had is that we do have a fair number of people who send us an agreement and then sort of ghost us. So if that happens and we haven't sent that letter out, our contractors are now not able to do the work that they need on your street. It delays restoration of sidewalks and roadways for everybody because, they've finished up all the other locations on the street. This one customer is not responsive. We've got to start that 37-day process that delays our work for everybody. So that communication we send out, regardless of whether we received an agreement or not. We also do the 30-day posting. If the mailing and service address are different, we're required to post the service address with a notice, with the thought being that it's a tenant that lives there that might not have gotten that 37-day letter. All PUC requirements that we're following. If you sent the agreement, you got the 37-day letter, and you're responsive to us and our contractors, the next time you'll hear from us is when we call you to schedule that coordination appointment that Rebecca talked about. What that is, one of a Pittsburgh Water employee, Tasha, is one of the folks on our team that handles this part of the process. But one of our employees will come out to your property with the contractor that's doing work in this neighborhood, Independent Enterprises. We will meet with you. We will go into the basement where the service line comes into your property. The first thing we'll do is we'll observe the service line material that comes through the wall. We're required, when we do visual observations to determine the material, we're required to put eyes on your service line in 3 locations. 2 of them are the excavation that we dig on either side of the curb stop, and the third is inside your house. So we will go down in your basement, we'll look at the service line material. We want to make sure we have situations where we dig at the street and it's copper on both sides, and we go into the basement and we find lead. So we want to make sure we've got those 3 points of observation. But we'll go into the basement, we'll observe where the service line material comes in. The contractor's rep will, look at your property. They'll look at, do you have a finished basement and you've built a wall in front of the meter? In situations like that, we'll ask you to give us access so that we can get at the meter and at the service line to do the work that's necessary. Again, we won't ask you to do that until we know that you've got lead. We don't want you to do that disturbance if we don't find lead. Mm-hmm. The other things the contractors will do is they'll look at things like, are there retaining walls, and do we think the trenchless technology that we use at 95+% of our locations, do we think it's going to be successful at your property? Like I said, most of the properties we work at, we're using a trenchless technology. From the sidewalk to the inside of the house, there's no disturbance along the way, and that's our goal, to do that at as many properties as we can. But they'll look at the retaining walls, they'll look at the stairs, they'll see if there's any concerns. People have put a lot of comments about impacts to retaining walls and stairs. I'll say up front, if your retaining wall is leaning over and half falling down and we need to excavate the sidewalk at the base of it, that's not our responsibility to fix your retaining wall. That will be your responsibility to do what's necessary to allow us to do our work. If that retaining wall is on private property and is part of your property. That's not the nature of our program. That's not how EPA and Penvest allows us to spend our dollars. They're giving us funding. They require us to use that funding for specific purposes and limit where we can use it. So that's something that the contractors will look at, and Tasha will look at when they come out and say, do we think that retaining wall is going to present us a problem? Are there other safety concerns? Not saying anybody here on this call, but we've had situations with hoarding where we just can't physically move through the basement to get our personnel and equipment in to do the replacement. We've had problems with other safety concerns with the structure itself, or oftentimes vacant buildings won't be secured, and we don't want to put an investment into copper piping inside your house and then have it scavenged and removed a couple days later. So there's things like that during that coordination appointment we'll go over with you as the property owner and discuss if there's any concerns. During that meeting, our contractor will give you an approximate schedule of when they'll be back to do the work. And again, as Rebecca said, typically the process is they'll go down the street, they'll do the verifications, they'll get an understanding of how many service lines need to be replaced, and then they'll start contacting property owners and scheduling those replacements from there. Been a lot of other questions about schedule. I think as exact as what we can get at this point in time, obviously the work hasn't started. Our contractor is intending to start work on August 17th in phase 1. We expect that it will take them about 2 months to complete each phase. So each phase will start about 2 months after August 17th. If we run into more lead than we think we have in the neighborhood, it might take them longer to get through each phase. If we don't find any lead at all, they might be into the second phase after a month. So that's the schedule we have now. That's constantly changing due to the nature of our project, and really the first thing that we do is dig that hole at the sidewalk and determine who has lead and doesn't have lead. We don't know that. Unfortunately, those records were not maintained, for the past century that our water system has been in existence. Up until the 1980s, the city of Pittsburgh didn't own any portion of the service line. So if there's ever work done on it, they never kept any records because it wasn't them doing the work. That's sort of the difficulty with the project, is we don't know what we're going to get into until we start digging. Again, a lot of the very specific questions that I've seen in the chat here regarding impacts to your property will be answered at that coordination meeting. I would ask people to wait for that, and if you don't get your questions answered, then by all means call into Lead Help and we can give you some more information. A little bit more information regarding the schedule. So probably in a couple of weeks from now, our Lead Help team will start calling people in the initial streets where our contractors are going to do work and schedule those coordination meetings. excuse me, so you'll receive a phone call. Please, if you're, if you're not home, give us a call back. Send an email with dates that you're available. And we will get that coordination meeting scheduled. And then as the work progresses, we'll continue through the neighborhood. We like to have as many of those coordination meetings done before our contractors start digging. The initial phase of the project, which this is, that doesn't always happen, but as we get further into it, we try to get out in advance of the contractor, so we have as many of those coordination meetings done as possible. And what that allows us to do is, if the contractor digs at the curb in front of your house and you have lead, they can immediately then call you to schedule that replacement. If we don't have an agreement and we don't have that coordination already completed, well, the contractor can't move on with their work. And again, to the best of our ability and their ability, we try to go down the street, do all of the work on that street, because then we can follow up and replace the sidewalks, work on the road base, do the paving. Rebecca did say that, the restoration activities will be completed in the springtime, but to the degree that we can get those streets done this fall, where we start work in August, we will be out there doing the restoration. Just the entire 4 phases of the neighborhood will not be done till next spring, after Domi's winter moratorium is passed. The other thing related to restoration, and I keep going back to this point, is, we can't pave a street until all the work is done on that street. So, if you've got neighbors, you're talking to neighbors, please ask them, have they returned the agreement? Have they heard from Pittsburgh Water about setting up a coordination? That's our best public outreach is the neighbors in the neighborhood, trying to make sure everybody's helping us out to do the right thing. Again, we want to get in and out of everybody's neighborhood as quickly as we can, but these are some of the things that can hold up that progress and hold up our ability to restore things after our work is complete. So I don't know if others, Tasha, Shannon, if there's, or Rebecca, if there's other specific comments that, one of the things asked about the plumbing improvement. So part of our work, we need to get a permit from Allegheny County Health Department, their plumbing division, to do the work on the private side. That requires a licensed plumber to do the work, requires us or that licensed plumber to get a permit to do that work. ACHD requires us to evaluate the plumbing inside the house. And the biggest part of that evaluation is there a backflow preventer present on the property? And what a backflow preventer is, it's pretty much as it sounds. It prevents water from your house flowing back into the public water system. So if you have some type of an emergency, maybe you've got a cross connection to part of your sewer system, it won't allow your water to go back into the public water system. In order for us to install a backflow preventer, we have to make sure there's an expansion tank present as well. With your hot water heater, water expands when it heats. And if you've got a backflow preventer without an expansion tank and the water expands, it could cause damage to your plumbing system. So we've got to put that expansion tank in once we put the backflow preventer. Again, a lot of properties we go into have an expansion tank. It's the small tank right next to your hot water heater. So if it's there, we don't need to replace it. But if it isn't there, we need to make sure we put one in. We also will typically put in a pressure reducing valve, so a pressure regulator essentially. So if you've got high pressure, we can dial that down to make sure again that the pressure from the water system doesn't cause any damage to your internal plumbing. So those are the improvements that we do. I will say all of our public and private service lines, we install 1-inch copper pipe. If you've got a lead service line, more often than not, it's a 5/8 diameter lead pipe. So if nothing else, we're oftentimes improving water flow through the installation of the new service line, which is one of the reasons why we put the pressure regulating valve in, to make sure we don't increase pressure too much to your property. Again, as far as restoration, we do replace the public sidewalk. So most of our, what we call the curb stops, if you recall the figure that Rebecca showed early in the presentation, most of our curb stops in the city of Pittsburgh are in the sidewalk. So in order to get access to the service line under the curb stop, we remove the public sidewalk. We do replace that. That is the one hardscape that we do replace. That's on public property technically. So and we need to remove it to get to our infrastructure, which is the reasoning and the rationale behind us replacing it. It's not, we've got to remove it to get to your infrastructure, but we have to remove it to get to our infrastructure. So that's where our policy on that comes from. So we will replace the sidewalk that we remove. So I tried to cover a lot of the questions. Again, if there's anybody from Pittsburgh Water on the call that identified one I didn't.
Dan, there was a question that someone had about had to do with the contract. I can't find it now. It was Elizabeth's question, that there still seem to be some questions about our being asked to sign the contract before all questions were answered. Would it just be advisable for them to call Lead Help to talk through their questions one-on-one if there are things specific to their property?
Yeah, things specific to the property, those are the type of questions that typically get answered during the coordination. If there's something very unique about your property and you want to speak to our contractors, we really want to get that agreement before we schedule that coordination. But if you call Lead Help and say, I want to have the coordination first, Tasha or the rep that comes out to meet with you will bring a copy of that agreement. We ask that, if your questions are answered at that coordination and you're satisfied, we ask that you give her that signed copy as she leaves. Again, it really helps us out because otherwise, people forget about it. It's not the first thing on their mind. And we've got to chase you down. And in that situation, if we find lead on your private side, we don't have an agreement, you will get more termination notices. And again, I understand, people don't like to get a letter saying we're going to terminate your water service, but we're in the position that the PUC has put us in, that's our obligation to do that. Couple of other questions as I'm scrolling through. Galvanized iron, if it's on the private side, we will replace that. We treat that the same as lead. The technical term for it is galvanized requiring replacement. The EPA regulations say if a galvanized service line has ever been downstream of a lead service line, it needs to be replaced. Given that our records are not that detailed and accurate going back decades, we assume that every private galvanized service line was at one point in time downstream of lead, and we will replace it. Now, if the entire service line is galvanized from the main to the house, that does not require replacement. That's not part of our program. The issue with being downstream of lead is that lead particles that corrode off a lead service line can accumulate inside the galvanized service line. That's why the approach is to replace those if they are or were once downstream of lead. Regarding somebody who replaced a service line a few years ago, we do have a reimbursement program. We've operated since I think 2019 or 2020. There's details on our website as far as how to apply for a reimbursement. We have done some retroactive. The program is really set up for somebody that is doing it in the future, not has done it in the past. But we will work with customers depending on when they did it and what records are available. Lead, non-lead on the map. There's two sides to the service line, as Rebecca showed in the graphic earlier in the presentation. Typically, the first material is the public side, and the second material is the private side. So if the map says lead, non-lead, it means that our records show the public side is lead and the private side is non-lead. You very likely received an agreement. We want to again make sure that if we dig and we find something other than what our records show, we've got the ability to go in and get that replacement done. Number one, again, we're expecting to start around August 17th, and each of the phases to take around 2 months to complete. At this point in time, that's about as detailed a schedule as we have. 48 hours to move the car. Again, maybe. We don't guarantee that. Our contractors are typically mobilizing to an area. We're calling you for a coordination appointment. When you have that coordination appointment, you can ask the contractor when they'll be doing the work, and they should be able to give you a better time frame than we are now before the project started. But we've got an obligation to comply with the DOMI requirements, which is a 48-hour notification. And at this point, we can't guarantee that it will be any longer. Pebble style, it says cement block. I'm not sure if it means sidewalk. We typically try to replace the sidewalks in kind. Given if there's a specific coloration to it, that it can be challenging, especially because a formula that was used years ago has sat out in the weather for many years, and if we did the same thing as when it was installed, it's probably going to look different. We'll work with you as best we can to match what it is that we're removing. The contractor's certificate of insurance lists Pittsburgh Water as an additional insured, along with the city of Pittsburgh, but we do not list individual property owners. Regarding returning agreements, if you'd like to call Lead Help and ask them if they've received the agreement, you're more than able to do that. We don't necessarily confirm that we've received it, other than we will call you to schedule that coordination. If we haven't received it, like I said, you're likely to get robocalls and a call from our Lead Help desk asking you to return that. I think I addressed, if you haven't received an agreement, suggest you go on our web map. Make sure your property is showing non-lead on both sides of the service line. If it's not, please call into Lead Help, and we will look into your specific address further. we didn't really start off with this, but our residential program covers any structure that has 4 residential units or less. I see a question here about 3 residential tenants. So, if it's a storefront with an apartment above it, we will go in and replace that service line if we find lead. If it's a multifamily dwelling with 4 units, we will replace that. If there's 5 or more units, that will be part of a future program. We're trying to get through all of our residential customer base as our first phase by the end of 2027, and then we're going to come back and do our non-residential service lines. Just as a order of magnitude, we've got about 70,000 residential customers, and there's about a little over 4,000 non-residential customers that we don't know what their service line material is, or they might have lead. So we're getting through the 70,000 first, and then we're going to go after the remainder. Yeah, the other thing regarding the parking, if you've if you have that coordination appointment and you're going to be out of town, bring that up at the coordination appointment. Tell our contractor, hey, I'm going to be out of town from August 30th to September 15th. When do you think you're going to do the work? I usually leave my car parked on the street. Is that going to be okay? Those are the kind of things we encourage people to discuss with the contractor. And to the degree that, we can work with that, we will. We obviously, want to have access to the curb stop so we can determine what the service line materials are while we're doing that on your street. Certainly if you've got mobility concerns, we're more than willing to work with that to make sure you've got access to your property, especially if there's a handicap spot in front of your property, that kind of thing. At the same time, we ask you to respect that we're trying to get work done. Again, we're trying to make sure we can get onto a street and get all of our work done and get off the street so we can move on to restoration. So, everybody on the street isn't having to deal with the mess for a longer period of time. Let's see. There's other.
Dan, there is a question here where someone is asking about, I just checked the map. It says we have lead on the private side, but we do not. We completely replaced all of our lead 25 years ago.
Yeah, and we get that a lot. People have replaced their service lines. And when I started off my conversation, I described the DEP standards that we need to meet. Unfortunately, 25 years ago, even 10 years ago, Pittsburgh Water was not keeping records of what the private side materials were. We had no responsibility or obligation to do so from any regulatory perspective, and we weren't doing that. So if you replace them, we probably don't have any records. Now, if you have a record, if you've got an invoice from a plumber that you might have kept, if you've got a county inspection record you might have kept, by all means, let us know that. And, we will then look and see what our public side record is for your address. If that is not lead, it's very likely we can skip over your property and not have to dig in front of it. It may be, though, that we still don't know what the public side is, and at a minimum, we need to we need to dig at the curb stop, as I described, and determine what the public side material is. So, if you do have records, if you've done a replacement, please send those to us, and if we can use those to avoid doing work at your property, believe me, we're we're not trying to just go out there and dig everywhere. We're trying to meet DEP standards. We're trying to make sure we get the lead out of the ground. If we've got records that will show us we don't need to dig, we're not going to.
Dan, can I say something really quick? I saw a question in the comments
Sure.
regarding lead. So someone asked about having lead levels in the water and testing and things of that nature. One thing that we do is we do treat our water with orthophosphate. So we have found that sometimes when people take samples of water, it may come back as non-detect, which is awesome because that means our orthophosphate is working. Most time lead lays dormant until it's actually jostled. So sometimes whenever we do verifications, it can cause some lead particles to leach off. That's why when we find lead, we give a Brita pitchrin filter, which we ask you guys to use while this process is going on and then for a certain time period after. So even though you may have did a test and it says non-lead, there may be a possibility that we do find lead when we do verify. But like I said, because we do treat the water with orthophosphate, there may not be anything to detect at that time. So hopefully that answers someone's question regarding that as well.
Yeah, yeah, good points, Tasha. Thank you. I think the two things I'll add to that is if you are interested in what the lead levels are in your drinking water now, you can go on our website and order a free testing kit. Our contracted laboratory will send that out to you. Grab the sample, get it back to the lab. It comes in a postage paid box that you send it back to them with, and you'll get the results a few weeks later. As Tasha said, a good point. I probably should have mentioned it earlier. As part of the process, when we dig at the curb, and if we do find lead, we will leave behind a water pitcher filter. As she said, the act of us digging up and digging around a lead service line can cause some disturbance to that service line. It might cause some lead particles inside the pipe to flow into your house. So if we do find lead, we will leave you that pitcher filter. As she said, we do ask you to use that to provide protection to yourself for, until we get the replacement done, and then for several months after that, because it can take a while for the lead levels to decrease. We do ask also that you flush out your household plumbing, remove aerators from your faucet, let the water run, to get anything that might have been disturbed out of your plumbing and out of your household plumbing system. We will, if you have a lead service line that we replace, 3 to 6 months after we do our work, you'll get a test kit in the mail. It asks you to collect a sample, a 1 liter sample. So what we call a first draw. Let the water sit overnight. First thing in the morning before you use the water, fill up. We'll provide you with 5 bottles. We ask you to fill up the first of those bottles, cap it off, fill up the next 3, and then dump them out. Fill up the 5th one, cap it off, and send us that back in the postage paid box that we send you. That way we make sure that any disturbance we cause to your service line that might have, dislodged something going to your household plumbing, we make sure that your lead levels are safe and that you no longer need to use that filter that we provided to you. So that's sort of the whole process to make sure any impacts that are caused by the disturbance associated with replacing the lead service line are mitigated through the use of that filter, and that the levels in your drinking water return to a low level, a safe level, and you can stop using that pitcher filter. So the question about how long the pipe will last, I will say we've run into a variety of different pipe materials. in our work. Most of um, most of what we find are lead, galvanized, or copper, and these materials have been in the ground in some cases for well over 100 years. We we say the copper pipe will last 50 years, but it's likely to be a lot longer than that. We do have a 2-year warranty. If you've had an opportunity to read through the agreement, that's described there. So the work that we do is warranted for 2 years. If you have any issues, we ask that you reach out to our lead help group, and we'll have our contractor return to your property to investigate. If it's associated with our work, we will take care of that.
One more thing, Dan, I'm sorry if you don't mind me jumping into. I saw a question regarding trees on properties. We do everything we can to avoid trees. We do deal with the arborists, so we do our due diligence to make sure that we are respecting any trees, landscaping, things of that nature, especially like large trees in yards or around where the curb boxes are. There have been different scenarios where we've actually relocated the line to avoid trees. So we do take that very serious. And I have seen a few questions about trees and understand that those are important to customers and their property. So please be mindful that we do take that very seriously. And we do work, like I said, with the arborist to avoid any disruption to your trees or anything that would affect the trees or hurt it.
Yeah, so we hire an arborist, but we also work with the city of Pittsburgh as well. They tell us what we can and can't do when it comes to our infrastructure and trees. A couple things here. When we do our work on the public side at your address, it should not affect anybody else on your block. That being said, if we have an issue with the water main, sometimes when we're drilling into that water main to put a new service line in, we'll have a problem with that water main. There are occasions where we may have to shut down a section of water main to be able to repair any issues that we have with the main. So it's not very typical, but I won't say that it never happens either. Regarding the question, I apologize, I did see it earlier, but didn't focus on it. But the area west of Area 4, I know we're doing Morningside and Stanton Heights as part of our current contract. So Highland Park is what we call our 2026A contract. Our 2025B includes both Stanton Heights and Morningside. If you're in that area and we're planning on doing work at your house, you're very likely are getting the same communication, have the same process that we described here today. So again, if you sent an agreement back and you got what we call our 37-day letter, you can confirm with lead help that they received it, but chances are we've sent those letters out to everybody regardless of whether we got the agreement back or not. So if you hang tight, we haven't got to those neighborhoods yet. You should be getting a call to schedule that coordination appointment when our contractor is 2 or 3 weeks from moving into that neighborhood. So on this particular project, we are not replacing water mains. Yeah, Tasha answered that, but we've done a couple of sections of water main replacement work in the Highland Park neighborhood back in, I want to say, sometime between 2019 and 2021. I don't know what the future plans are, but our water main work, obviously that's a much more extensive project than the service lines. And we prioritize those mainly based on the condition of the main. try to focus our resources where we've got a lot of main breaks and things like that. So this project, our goal has been for a while to get all of our lead service lines removed from our residential customers, and that's what the focus of this project is. Any others, Rebecca, Tasha, Shannon, that you saw that? A lot of questions.
think I think we answered the majority of the questions or answered them in grouping. Thank you for grouping them like that. I think that was really helpful to just go through them in that manner.
Rebecca, can you maybe one more time put in the chat the lead help phone number and our lead web address? I think we've put that down.
Yeah, I
a couple
will
of times,
add that.
There was a question, Dan, really quick, to ask if the public side line replacement causes water cutoff for others on the block.
Yeah,
that
no,
was
I think
one that I've seen.
I think I just covered that.
Okay.
That unless there's a problem with the water main,
Correct.
no. But there may be some unique situations where we need to shut the main down if we have problems. And the other thing I guess I'll leave with is we got a great group of people in lead help and our liaisons, like I said, of which Tosh is one of them. They're out there for you. Please, if you have questions, give them a call. If it's something specific for your property, if it's something specific to your property, we'll probably ask you to wait until that coordination appointment, because the folks in the office are probably not going to be able to answer property specific questions, but they're there for you. Please give them a call if you have any questions. The last one I just saw regarding interior plumbing is galvanized. The answer is yes, it's possible that galvanized interior plumbing can retain lead particles and continue to leach. That unfortunately is not part of our program. The funding that we receive is specific to service line materials. It doesn't allow us to use the dollars we're getting on interior plumbing beyond the connections that we need to do to connect back into that interior plumbing. So that is not something that our program is covering at this point in time. I would encourage you specifically, or after we do the replacement and you get that test kit in the mail, to test your water to have a better understanding of if there are impacts at your property. I guess with that, I'll turn it back over to Rebecca.
I'm going to post the link to the lead map one last time. And then also contact info for lead help. I just need to grab the phone number. All right. So those should be the last few things in the chat right now. And I just want to thank everybody for their time and attention tonight. I think if you have property specific questions, it's best to try to reach out to Lead Help, schedule the coordination calls. I did see and hear through the comments that the agreement, you can have the coordination call prior to sending in the agreement, but that we would appreciate receiving those agreements as soon as possible, because the sooner we receive those, the sooner we can begin the work and get started with the project. But really just appreciate everyone's attention this evening and taking the time to attend. So hope everyone has a great evening. And with that, I'll go ahead and end the meeting.